Emerging from the depths of the ocean like avenging spirits, sails unfurl with a thunderous roar as a formidable fleet of English ships descends upon the shores of Hispaniola. The Spanish inhabitants, taken aback by the sudden onslaught, flee inland, leaving behind the sparsely populated island that the English seek to claim as their own. While their attempts to conquer Spanish Hispaniola may have faltered, the English are determined to seize control of this new territory. Jamaica, once claimed by Spain in the days of Columbus, has become a focal point of their colonial ambitions. The indigenous Taino people, subjected to enslavement and brutality, have dwindled in number due to disease and maltreatment, leaving the Spaniards to turn to enslaved Africans to sustain their labor force. In the chaos of the English invasion, roughly 1,500 enslaved Africans find themselves suddenly liberated, seizing the opportunity to fight for their freedom. Though Spanish resistance persists for a time, the liberated Africans, dubbed Maroons by the English, continue to wage a relentless guerrilla war from the shelter of the island's dense forests. As the conflict rages on, the Maroons retreat deeper into the forested mountains, evading capture and confounding their pursuers. Their ways and customs become shrouded in mystery to the white settlers, who dare not venture into their domain for fear of the unknown. Meanwhile, the coasts of Jamaica become infested with buccaneers such as the infamous Henry Morgan, who pillaged Spanish ports and ships with ruthless abandon. Despite the condemnation of clergymen who decry the lawlessness of ports like Port Royal, it is not the dwindling ranks of buccaneers that pose the greatest threat, but rather the insidious blight of slavery. The enslaved population, numbering 550 Africans in 1662, swells to 45,000 by the turn of the century, subjected to brutal treatment and heinous violence on the sugar plantations. Rebellion incurs savage punishment, with perpetrators facing castration, amputation, or even death by burning alive. Yet amidst the despair and suffering, the Maroons stand as a beacon of resistance, launching daring raids on plantations under the cover of night, liberating their brethren and striking fear into the hearts of their oppressors. In the Blue Mountains, Nanny Town serves as a bastion of Maroon culture and tradition, where freedom reigns and the legacy of West African heritage is preserved. Led by revered elders like Nanny and stern leaders like Kajo, the Maroons traverse the Jamaican hills with skill and determination, their signaling horns echoing through the valleys as they brandish spears and stolen weapons against their enemies. As British planters encroach upon their territory, the Maroons prepare to defend their land and their freedom, drawing upon their ancestral knowledge of war and resistance. In the year 1722, the Maroons launched a series of daring strikes against the plantations dotting the Jamaican landscape. Plantation owners watched in horror as their livelihoods went up in flames, their estates deserted as enslaved Africans were inspired to rebel or flee into the welcoming embrace of the Maroons. For years, the Maroons continued their raids with impunity, their elusive tactics leaving the British forces bewildered and unable to mount a meaningful retaliation. In a desperate bid to quell the uprising, the British Crown dispatched regiments of professional soldiers to Jamaica in 1730. However, these seasoned troops found themselves outmaneuvered and outwitted by the Maroons, who expertly led them down false trails into deadly traps, only to vanish into the impenetrable forest once more. As the conflict escalated, Maroon warfare and slave rebellion combined to bleed the white population, already outnumbered by enslaved individuals at a ratio of 10-1. Faced with mounting losses and the looming threat of a full-scale uprising, the governor urgently convened an emergency meeting of the legislature, urging them to address the peril facing the island. Large parties of British troops were mobilized against the Maroons, resulting in the capture of several settlements. However, the enslaved Africans forced to fight for the British often defected to the Maroons, swelling their ranks and bolstering their resistance. The windward Maroons, fiercely loyal to their leader Nanny, faced off against a formidable British force of 400 troops, including 100 professional soldiers, in a dramatic showdown near Nanny Town. Despite being outnumbered, the Maroons employed guerrilla tactics to devastating effect, ambushing the British and inflicting heavy casualties. Emboldened by this triumph, rebellions erupted across the island, with scores of runaways joining the ranks of the Maroons. Acknowledging the growing power of the Maroons and the threat they posed to colonial authority, the legislature of Jamaica grudgingly conceded their strength. Plantations were plundered, settlements abandoned, and the royal revenue threatened by the relentless onslaught of Maroon resistance. Even the most seasoned British soldiers found themselves outmatched by the cunning and ferocity of their opponents. In 1734, a large British force launched a surprise attack on Nenny Town, bombarding the village with cannons and forcing the Maroons to retreat. Though they fought fiercely, the Maroons ultimately lost Nenny Town, dispersing 2 other hideouts across the island. Despite this setback, the Windward Maroons remained a thorn in the side of the colonial authorities, resuming their fight in 1737 with renewed determination. Realizing that outright victory was impossible, the British sought to make peace with the Maroons, offering them ownership of land and autonomy over their settlements in exchange for assistance in maintaining colonial control. The Liberated Maroons, led by Codjo, accepted the terms, securing a measure of freedom and safety for themselves while agreeing to cooperate with the British in suppressing future rebellions and capturing runaway slaves. In the aftermath of the signing of the treaties in 1739, tensions simmered among the Maroons, particularly within the ranks of Codjo's Liberated band. Many Maroons grappled with a sense of betrayal, feeling that the agreements struck with the British compromised their ideals of freedom and autonomy. Yet, despite the internal discord, Codjo maintained firm control over his followers, quelling dissent and enforcing obedience to the terms of the treaty. As the British officials paraded triumphantly through the Windward Maroon settlements, they were met with begrudging compliance rather than enthusiastic acquiescence. Nenny's people, renowned for their fierce independence and disdain for colonial authority, reluctantly accepted the terms imposed upon them, recognizing the pragmatic necessity of avoiding conflict with both the British and their fellow Maroons. Meanwhile, the enslaved population languished under the oppressive yoke of slavery, their hopes for liberation dashed by the alliances forged between the Maroons and the colonial regime. With each new shipment of enslaved individuals arriving on Jamaican shores, the ranks of the oppressed swelled, amplifying the cries for freedom that echoed across the plantations. Amidst this volatile backdrop, the Haitian Revolution erupted in 1791, sending shockwaves throughout the Caribbean and igniting fears of a similar uprising in Jamaica. The British authorities, already wary of the Maroons' potential for rebellion, intensified their efforts to suppress dissent and maintain control over the enslaved population. In 1795, tensions between the British and the Maroons reached a boiling point, resulting in open warfare, particularly in the village of Trentown, formerly led by Codjo. Despite the valiant resistance of the Maroons and their allies among the enslaved population, the British ultimately prevailed, imposing harsh terms of surrender and banishing the inhabitants of Trentown from their ancestral lands. Exiled to remote and inhospitable regions of Jamaica, the Maroons endured years of hardship and deprivation, their dreams of freedom dashed by the brutal realities of colonial rule. Yet, even in exile, the spirit of resistance remained alive as the Maroons continued to defy their oppressors through acts of defiance and resilience. In the decades that followed, the Maroons persisted in their quest for freedom, petitioning the British government for the right to return to their homeland. While some eventually found refuge in Sierra Leone, others remained determined to reclaim their rightful place in Jamaica, embarking on a journey of return that symbolized their unwavering commitment to the struggle for liberation. Today, the legacy of the Maroons endures as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of oppression and adversity. Their story serves as a reminder of the ongoing struggle for justice and equality, inspiring future generations to continue the fight for freedom and dignity for all.